So this is the Wednesday meeting of John J. Lodge number 653 in White Plains, New York. We are lucky today to have my friend Jack Sherry do a presentation on Brother Ben Franklin. I've known Jack since before both of us were Masons because we both do an event at the DeWint House in Tapan. It's called Tapan Colonial Day. They have it every year. And I reenact a Revolutionary War militiaman, and Jack Sherry reenacts Ben Franklin. So I think he's an expert. I welcome Jack Sherry to our presentation. We're going to go and pin you. Well, there you go.
I'm going to go in and out of character, but it started when I was teaching at Paramus Catholic in Paramus, New Jersey. One of my colleagues one day, we're at our mailboxes, we're at the counter, we're looking at our mail, and he turns and looks at me and he says, "You know, you turn your head a certain way, you remind me of Ben Franklin." Never thought about it. Went home, told my wife. She goes, "Oh, you know, he's right." Now, I've been doing reenacting for quite a while. So I had a colonial outfit, and I started to play them at our open houses. And I started this, and then I was doing we belonged to a dance group, and I hadn't been dancing in a while, and we were doing a fundraiser, Westchester Oratorical Society. So they said, so the group said to me, "Look, you haven't participated, so why don't you just come in civilian garb?" So I thought I'd play Ben Franklin. It was my first time out, aside from the open houses. And I went out and I said, you know, it was fun. We had a good time. There was a dinner. You know, I wasn't dancing. Somebody said to me, wise guy said, "Why aren't you dancing, Dr. Franklin?" I said, "Gout." And he said, "That's right, you had gout." And I said, "Yeah, well, that's why I'm not dancing." He said, "Oh, good point." So had a good time with that. And then we were at an event in the Van Cortlandt Manor House in Van Cortlandt Park. In Van Cortlandt Park, a couple of weeks later, and a director, a good friend, Laura Myers. Laura's husband, by the way, is a Mason. He's in Lodge down in Philadelphia. Billy Myers. I don't know. Do you know Matt? Do you know Billy?
I do not.
He's with I think it's Corum's Artillery. Does reenacting. Anyway, Laura comes out of the house, sees me, and says, "I wish that I had hired you." This was September of 06. And in January of 06, the 300th anniversary of my birth, she had hired Ben Franklin from Philadelphia, who came up and she hated the guy. Said, "I look much better." And a friend of hers, a colleague, called her up and said, "We're having a kite day in the Bronx. We need a Ben Franklin. Who was the guy you hired in January?" No, don't hire him. Go with my friend Jack Sherry." And so they did. And I played Ben for 2 days. And it took me 6 months to get paid from the city of New York. But at any rate, so I performed at New York Historical Society, and I've been at Federal Hall in Manhattan. I've been in a documentary, Ben Franklin's Pirate Fleet, for PBS special. So I've done that. So I've been playing them since about 2005, 2004, somewhere in that neck of the woods. I missed the tricentennial. It was terrible. I didn't think I knew enough. Turns out I knew more than enough. You know, the fun thing is that you know, what if you get a question you don't know the answer to? I mean, You know, you can't say, I can't say, I don't know. I mean, I'm him. What do you mean you don't know? You can't say that. So I came up with a way of getting around it. Somebody asked me a question, I have no idea what the answer. Now, of course, little kids will say, what's your favorite color? I make something up. Blue, I don't know. Brown, doesn't matter. But so what did I come up with? Well, I was born January 17th, 1706. So that makes me 300 and something years old. Do you know, there are some things that I just don't remember.
Sounds like a good answer.
It is. I usually get a laugh out of that.
Did you
And
say
I go,
17?
next question.
Did
And
you
I
say
go on.
1706?
1706.
Yeah, so you know my Chinnacook, a relative of mine.
Really? Wait a minute. What a Native American. We dealt with Native Americans, but not in 1706. I mean, I was just born, you know. So I grew up in Boston, lived in Boston for until I was 17, and I had been apprenticed to my brother, and he was a printer. I learned the printing trade. So I went to, but we had arguments, and I ran away to Philadelphia. Eventually set up my own printing shop, which, long story short, I set up my own printing shop. 1730, I was 24. Set up my own print shop, got married. Well, actually, it was common law marriage. My wife, Deborah, had been married before, and her husband ran off to the islands somewhere, and we couldn't find him. And Pennsylvania didn't recognize abandonment for divorce. You had to find the person. Couldn't find him. So Deborah and I moved in together. And it was a common law marriage. And it went on for 44 years. So it was a good long time. But 1730. I was also presented with a little bundle of joy on my doorstep. My son, William, as I used to say, my errata or my mistake. I got a maid from a neighboring house in the family way. So I had, and I set up my print shop, and I set up, I set up newspaper, Pennsylvania Gazette, set up the almanac. I called it Poor Richard's Almanac. Why did I call it Poor Richard's? Why didn't I call it Ben Franklin's Almanac? Well, we predicted the weather. Do you know how accurate weather prediction was in my day? Didn't want to do that. So I called it Poor Richard's. I had made up a name. Now, when I was with my brother as a printer, I wanted to write, he had a newspaper, the New England Current, and I wanted to write for it. And he said, Ben, we've got two problems. One, you're my little brother. And two, you're my apprentice. It's not going to look good. So did I give up? No. I disguised my handwriting. I wrote letters to the editor, and I pretended to be a 40-year-old widow. And I called myself Silence Do-Good. And he bought it. It was amazing. It was great. Excuse me. So I had, so I created Poor Richard's Almanac. I had been printing an almanac for a fellow by the name of Titan Leeds. And he took his business somewhere else. And now he's my competitor. You have to do something. Have you ever heard about killing your competition? Well, not literally, but what I did in my first almanac, I predicted Titan Leeds' death. We named the day, the hour, the month, everything. And that came and went. And Leeds' almanac came out. Now, almanacs came out once a year. Predicted the weather, you told horoscopes, things. And Leeds, in his almanac said, called myself and Richard Saunders, Poor Richard, all sorts of foul names. in print. Didn't have to worry about slander and libel back then. And he called us all these names, and he said, you know, I didn't die. And the following year, my next almanac comes out, and we said the Titan leads we knew would never have said those things about us. He must have died. So this went on year after year. You're dead. I'm not dead. You're dead. I'm not dead. You're not, you know, dead. And then an amazing thing happened. Guess what happened?
He died.
He died. That's right. He died. You know, and we said, hey, died a long time ago. So 1730, I had Pennsylvania Gazette, and I printed some jokes about the local Masons. And several of them came around to see me and explained that what they were all about. And here I was 24, 25. When I was 19, I had printed up, I decided I was into self-improvement, and I decided to print up. I printed up 12 virtues, and I thought I would handle, you know, like study one virtue a week. And somebody, I showed the list to a friend. A friend said, you've missed one virtue, humility. And he said, so I added that on. But the virtues were temperance and silence and order and resolution, frugality, etc. There were 13, so every week I'd pick one, study it. And I was going for perfection. Now, of course, when these Masons come around and said this to me, and they said, well, we're into self-improvement. Wow, I'm into self-improvement. And so this was a way that you could improve yourself. And there are different ways of doing that. I think charity work is another way that we can improve ourselves. Sorry, I get a little froggy at night. And anyway, so, there was a good one, chastity. You know, I was presented with William, my son. I violated that one, you know, had him out of a wedlock. So, and I had Poor Richards. You know some of the Proverbs? Famous one. Early to bed, early to rise.
Sure.
How does it end?
Makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
There you go. Okay. Time is money. The only thing certain in life is
Death and taxes.
that's right. Some of my favorites were wait. Ah, yes. 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead. Another one. Here's good advice. You can give it to your children. Tell them that this is great advice. Keep your eyes wide open before marriage, half shut afterwards. That's good advice. So I had the almanac. I had the sayings. I was doing, I joined the Masons, was initiated in 1731, the age of 25, remained in the Masons for many years, became Grand Master of Pennsylvania at one point. When I went to France during the Revolution, you remember that? The Revolution? Well, the Lodge of the Nine Sisters inducted me in the Masonic Lodge in Paris The only way you could get into it was to be invited. I was the 109th person to be invited to be in this lodge. So I was with the Masons in Paris. And of course, people have all heard the story about, me in Paris, in France. There were people made Franklin busts. There were Franklin pictures. They made up Franklin dolls. I wrote to my daughter Sally that they had idolized me. Spelled it D-O-L-L in capital letters. She wouldn't miss it. One of Marie Antoinette, the Queen's ladies in waiting, sang my praises to the King, Louis. And he got fed up with it. So he gave her a picture of me, enameled onto the inside bottom of a chamber pot.
How'd you feel about that?
Well, I wondered about it. See, they didn't have indoor plumbing in my day. So you had a chamber pot. In the middle of the night, if you didn't want to go out to the little house outside, you did your business into a chamber pot. And the French would empty their chamber pots into their streets. They'd open the windows, and you'd hear, "Gardez-l'eau," which means watch out for the water. And they'd throw contents out the window. If you heard "Gardez-l'eau," you jumped. It was, you didn't get splattered. Their streets were an open sewer. You can imagine what it smelled like. So that was part of my story. Anyway, anybody have any questions?
What else did you do with the Masons?
Well, of course, we had in our meetings, we did charity work, we did fundraisers. There was a young man that wanted to get into the Masons in Philadelphia. And they made up a fake ceremony to him. He was limited, had some mental problems. And so they played a joke on him. And they made up a ceremony and they inducted him in. Unfortunately, part of it was with some burning oil, which got on him and he was burned to death. Didn't stand in good stead. My mother wrote to me and said, "Should you really be a member of that organization?" I said, "They do good work. It's a good group." She left it alone.
How often did you meet and were you active in lodge?
Oh yeah, I was active. I was master of my lodge. I was Grand Master of Pennsylvania. We met at least once a month. So.
Okay. If other people have questions, wave your hand and I will unmute you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I did some of my research myself, and I found out that Ben Franklin created this group at age 21 named Junto with other scholars. By any chance, would you know anything more about that?
Oh, absolutely. The junta was created. We were primarily tradesmen, and we wanted to improve ourselves. So a group of us got together, and we would meet once a week, and we would write essays, and then we would critique them. But the junta was a self-improvement society that we also did self-improvement. We also improved the community. We got streetlights put in, and we
Really?
got the streets paved, and we got a hospital established. And there was a visiting minister that had come into Philadelphia, and none of the churches would let him speak, George Whitfield. And so we built a hall for visiting ministers, and it was underutilized. So we decided to create a school. It was the first non-sectarian college. Today, I think you call it the University of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
That was the Junto. We did a lot of good for the community.
And now, how were you able to, I just, the pseudonym that you created for your brother, how were you able to not like be able to tell him and say, hey, that's me, or?
Well, eventually he found out. And we had a major argument. And he used to like to beat me up. We had an argument. That's when I ran away to Philadelphia. Now, I was an apprentice, legally bound to him. It was like slavery. And I said, so a friend told the ship's captain it was illegal to help an apprentice run away. And my friend told the ship's captain that I'd gotten a girl in the family way. So he brought me on board the ship, and I managed to escape Boston.
Okay.
There was another, yeah, there we go.
Robert?
Yes, I have a question on it. When you first set up the first fire department, was it through a Masonic lodge?
It was through the Junto we created, and the lodges. Yeah, we needed to create fire companies. I sold insurance, fire insurance, to people, and they would put a marker on their house. And if that person's house caught fire, we would go in. Now, some of us carried bags, and their job was go into the house and collect as many papers and valuables that you could, put in a bag and get out. And the rest of us would go into the house and try to put the fire out. We all had buckets, and you form a bucket brigade, and we had saved up enough money to get a fire engine. Oh, that also brings up, do you know what group ruled Pennsylvania in my day?
The
The
Quakers.
group that founded it. William Penn was a Quaker. You weren't allowed to fight, and you couldn't serve in the military, and they wouldn't vote funds for a fort. And we wanted to buy cannons from New York. So I went to the members, to the Quakers, and I said, look, stay home tomorrow. We're going to have a vote. You stay home, your consciences will be clear. To everybody else, we said, we have to buy fire engines. Cannon. It's a fire engine. So we said, fire engine. They said, oh, we can buy fire engines. We bought 18 of them from New York. The cannons arrived, we put them in a fort, guarded the Delaware, protected against pirates. And we had our fire company. Another question. Or did that satisfy you?
I have a question, another question. When you're crossing the seas, you did a whole analysis of the way the currents ran.
Ah, yes. Well, the question is, it took 3 or 4 weeks longer for a ship traveling from Europe or from Britain to America than it did from America to Britain. And the question was, why did it take so long to travel west? Well, I had cousins that were seafarers, and there was a body of water that we found out, a current out in the Atlantic that flowed in a northeasterly direction. And it came up out of the Gulf of Mexico. It was
Gulf
called
Stream.
the Gulf Stream. And I was the first one to chart it. See, the water in the Gulf Stream is warmer than the surrounding water. So what I would do is take a thermometer and dip it in as we crossed through the Gulf Stream, and I would measure the temperature of the water. Also at night, sea creatures that were in it, plankton, would luminesce. So there'd be like a glow to the water. And if you saw that, you were in the Gulf Stream.
How many times did you travel the ocean to Europe?
I made 4 round trips. So.
All to Paris? All to France?
No. I made one to England when I was 18. And then I went over when I was a Pennsylvania representative. Went over twice. And then I went over to France, and that was my last round trip. And of course, everybody goes to me, oh, the French women. How'd you like the French women? I said, oh, ooh la la, they were wonderful. The funny thing about the French woman was you couldn't kiss them on the lips. It would mess up the rouge, mess up their lipstick. Couldn't kiss them on the cheek. It messed up the paint because they painted their faces. The paler you were, the better you were. More fashionable. So you could only kiss them on the neck. I don't know if that's where the term necking came about. It's possible.
Jim, how about you?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm trying to unmute you. It's not working.
No questions, but I'm very happy to see Jack again, and thank you so much for regaling us tonight.
Oh, you're welcome. It was fun.
Ramon, you had another question.
Yes. How was your relationship with your son, considering he was a loyal, he was loyal to the British, and you had the ideas, they were starting to grow with the colonies. So
well, he and his mother and I were not married, which means that he was a bastard. And because of the stuff that went on, he was a big bastard. Or maybe a little bastard, I don't know. But I did not, William, to be fair, I certainly wouldn't want to be fair, but I'll be fair. William had been in my shadow for a good part of his life. And they wanted to curry favor with me. And the British government made him governor of New Jersey. And he got out from under my shadow. And he was his own man. And when the revolution broke out, his allegiance, he felt, was to the king and not to me. And in some ways, I guess you couldn't blame him. If he went back with me, he would be under my shadow again. Didn't want to do that. And he had gotten a lot of things from the British government. So he stayed with the king. Broke my heart. I cut him out of my will. Actually, that's not quite true. I gave him land in Canada that I owned. It's worthless to me. Here, you can have this land. Of course, he went to England and died in England. So I don't know what he ever did with the land, but I gave it to him. Yeah, that was William. I had two other children. I had Francis, Frankie, who died of smallpox at the age of 4. I don't like to talk about it that much. I was going to have him inoculated, but he was sick. And I wanted to make sure he was healthy before, because inoculation, you basically got some of the disease. It was dangerous, particularly if you were sick. But unfortunately, a smallpox epidemic came through Philadelphia, and it carried him off. Yes, we knew about pandemics in my day. So it was, and then I had my daughter Sally, or Sarah, or Sally, and she lived, and she had children. I had grandchildren. So 3 kids that I acknowledged.
How about Jack?
Jack,
I enjoyed your talk very much.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know. I've gotten this hoarseness, and it's a doctor thinks it's allergies. Never had it before, but I'm fine in the morning, but I'm not at night.
One more question.
I haven't done one of these as Ben. This is my inaugural, my first time out. I would like to do more of them, maybe tape a few. Actually, what I was thinking about doing was doing one of these presentations and do it as a fundraiser. Because you can hook up PayPal with Zoom.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and they can, and then, so if you were doing a webinar and you wanted them to have admission, you could set it up. So I figured if you could do an admission charge, why not do a donation, and have people donate money. I mean, there's a lot of charities out there that could use funds. I mean, we have brothers that are in need. Certainly, I'm sure within your own lodge that might be. I know these. Any of you do Scottish Rite?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do Scottish Rite, and they have Brothers Helping Brothers.
Jacob, do you have any questions? Are you there,
I got
Jacob?
one last one. I have a last one.
Okay. Robert.
The ladies you went with in France, how was those relationships? You had 2 ladies that you loved in France.
Yeah, Madame Helvetius and Madame Briand. One was married, the other one was not. The one that was not, I proposed marriage to. She turned me down. Now,
How old were you when that happened?
I'm sorry?
How old were you when that happened?
Let me think. I was close to 80.
Okay.
I mean,
Did you write her a contract?
I'm sorry?
You wrote her a contract?
Well, I offered
A
her
contract
marriage.
about living with her and not living with her?
Deborah died in 74, before the revolution.
Mm-hmm.
My wife plays Deborah. Let me step out of character. My wife plays Deborah. Matt, you know Celeste, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, she plays Deborah. And people will come up to her and say, your husband was a rascal in France. And she'll go look at them like, what? When was he in France? And they'll say, during the revolution. And she'll step back and go, there was a revolution? And I have to turn around and tell a person she died in 74, before the revolution. There's no knowledge of it.
One more question on this side.
Okay.
So, the eagle versus the turkey.
Ah,
What was that?
I wanted the turkey as the national bird, a uniquely American bird, a sturdy bird. I mean, an eagle is a carrion eater. It steals from other birds. I said, no, we don't want the eagle. We want the turkey. Now, you got to remember, though, you have to remember that they wouldn't let me write the declarations. And you know why?
Why is that?
Because they were afraid I was going to put a joke into it. So, I mean, I signed 4 major documents in American history, and I was the only American to sign all 4. I signed the Declaration. I signed the Treaty of Alliance with the French. I signed the Peace Treaty, and I signed the Constitution. And if it was my speech that got the Constitution approved, now think about it. If I had married that French woman and had stayed in France, I wouldn't have been around for the Constitution. You know, I mean, it's just amazing how things work out.
True.
Your printing press print the Constitution copies of?
Sorry?
Did your printing presses print the Constitution?
No,
It was,
no, I had given up my printing press by that time. When I was 42, I retired from business, and I gave my printing business, I sold it to my print shop manager. His name was David Hall. And David bought my business. And I said to him, pay me 500 pounds down payment and 500 pounds a year for 18 years, and then the business is yours. So, he said, fine, I'll do it. And a common workman in my day could live comfortably on 25 pounds. I was getting 500. Plus I had, I was selling paper. We were selling other things. I had other investments. Although I had written to in 1750, at the age of 44, I wrote to my mother, Abia Folger, Franklin, and I said to her, I wrote and I said, Mother, I would rather it be said that I lived a useful life rather than I died rich.
I did both.
And I did both. Yeah, I had some money when I died. A little bit of money. I could have been a lot wealthier if I'd stayed in business, but I didn't. At 42, I retired. I figured, how long am I going to live? I lived another 42 years. At 84, I passed away. Gout, kidney stones.
What was the average lifespan at that time?
Well, I had 16 brothers and sisters.
Whoa.
And I outlived all but one. My sister Jane outlived me. But the average lifespan was, I retired at 42. I figured I'm good. And it was an 18-year contract. I figured I'd probably pass away somewhere in that time frame. Unfortunately for David Hall, he did. He died within that time frame. It was too bad. But 18 years, by 60, I was going to be, no more income from the printing. But fortunately, I was a delegate, Pennsylvania delegate by that point. So,
Did you get paid as being a delegate?
yes. Yeah, when I was the delegate, the first time I went over to England, I was getting I was representing Pennsylvania. We were dealing with the Penn family, trying to get them to pay their fair share of the taxes, which you can imagine they didn't want to do. And we were arguing. The second time I went over, which was a number of years later, I mean, the first time I was there for 5 years. I came home for 2. They made me Postmaster General, Deputy Postmaster. Myself and William Hunter, who was the had a printing shop in Williamsburg, and he handled the southern colonies, I handled the northern colonies, and we were the postmasters for the colonies. I had been postmaster for Philadelphia. We put the post office on a paying basis. We were making money from it. It was like the British government went, "Wow, we've never made money from the post office." Well, we did. And it was, but you know, you wanted to be postmaster because you wanted to distribute your newspapers and your almanacs. So, you know, when I was not postmaster of Philadelphia, the fellow that was a rival printer, and he wouldn't allow the postman to carry my newsletters and my newspapers and my stuff. I had to bribe them to have them carried. It was despicable. But when I was postmaster, I let everybody, you know, they paid it, because when you were postmaster, you had what was called franking, or you had free postage. Of course, postage in my day was different. You didn't put a stamp on the letter. You didn't pay for the postage. The person receiving the letter paid the postage.
How much do they know how much to charge? Or was it because?
Well, it depended on, have you ever seen the mile markers
Yeah,
that are on the Boston Post Road and Albany Post Road?
yeah.
You paid by the distance. How far did it come? That's why one of the reasons you had the mile markers, which, by the way, guess who put those mile markers in?
You did.
Me. And I created an odometer. I invented an odometer so we could measure out the miles. I mean, you know about my inventions, the lightning rod, my electrical experiments. It was shocking. But it made me, here was a fellow that had 2 years of I had 2 years of formal schooling. And father pulled me out of school, couldn't afford it. Had 12 kids at home. Said, I can't afford to send you to school. Ben, you're my 10th son. You're going to be my tithe, 1/10, to the church, congregational church. You're going to become a minister. Then he found out 2 things. 1, what it would cost, and 2, what ministers make. He said, maybe that's not such a good idea. And I became apprentice to my brother, James. Of course, that's a whole, you know, I was at age 12. By age 17, I ran away. I made it up to him, though. I took in his son, and he became one of my apprentices. I taught him the printing trade. James died. It was too bad. But his wife took over the business and ran it.
Jacob, do you have any questions?
I have another one.
You need to unmute yourself, Jacob. You can ask, time for questions. Okay, Ramon.
So I'm interested, what was your favorite meal or food growing up while celebrating your birthday or birthdays, considering the change to the Gregorian calendar?
Well, yeah, I know. Different. Whatever was put in front of me. Of course, have you heard about the mussel story?
No.
I arrived at an inn And I went in, and it was winter, and my favorite chair at the fireplace was occupied. So I told the tavern keeper, let me order a bucket of mussels for my horse. And everybody went, what? Your horse is going to eat mussels? I have got to see this. So the innkeeper brought the mussels out to the horse, and everybody went out to watch him eat it. So my seat was free, and I went in, I sat down, my favorite chair, and I waited. And a few minutes went by, and the innkeeper came in with the bucket of mussels and said, horse wasn't interested. Oh, that's all right. Give me the bucket, I'll eat them. But birthdays, no, it didn't bother me. I mean, whatever was in front of me. My favorite wine or liquor was Madeira. Loved Madeira. I liked a lot of things. And I liked a lot of wine and beer. George Washington, when he stopped for the Constitutional Convention, he stopped at my house on his way into Philadelphia, 1787. I was 80. But he wrote home and said, Dr. Franklin and I opened a hogshead of porter as beer, and it was very good.
That's true. You did create a dictionary about drinking, isn't it?
It's possible. Yeah, it's possible. There's a lot of things. But for somebody that's 300 and something years old, guess what?
Max.
I don't remember.
Max, you still there? You have any questions? Max's screen is blank, so maybe he's somewhere
no.
there. Okay, I've got two more questions. What I could think of probably several more, but what do you think is your greatest Masonic accomplishment?
Well, I like the fact that I was inducted into the Lodge of the Nine Sisters.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But, it was becoming a better person, helping others to become better persons. Was probably, I printed one of the first constitutions, excuse me.
Yeah, I've seen a copy of that.
First Masonic constitutions. And I was the printer. So I wanted on my tombstone, I wanted it to read, towards the end of my life, I wanted it just to read printer, Benjamin Franklin, printer. But I had, when I was a young man, let's see if I can find it. Ah, there it is. When I was a young man, I was very ill. 21, 22. I thought I was going to die. I had pleurisy, a lung disease. And being a brash young man, I wrote my epitaph. And the epitaph was to read this: the body of B. Franklin, printer, like the cover of an old book, its contents torn out and stripped of its lettering and gilding, lies here, food for worms. But the work shall not be lost, for it will, as he believed, appear once more in a new and more elegant edition, revised and corrected by the author. Is that a great epitaph? But of course, I said, by the time I was getting later in life, I said, let's not anger God. I said, he might get a little annoyed with that. So let's not do that. Just put down printer. And then they didn't even do that. And Matt, what was your other question?
What do you think's your greatest accomplishment as a founding father, besides signing all these documents?
The United States of America. I was there when we declared independent. I helped write the Declaration. I helped with the Constitution. We helped create the United States. And of course, as I said to Mrs. Powell, the mayor of Philadelphia's wife, when we were leaving Independence Hall, after we created the Constitution, and she asked me when I walked outside, she said, "So, Dr. Franklin, do we have a democracy or a republic?" To which I replied, does anybody know?
Yes?
Said, "We have a republic if you can keep it." And that's what I replied to her. I've been in the Powell house. It's an interesting house. But
Okay, last chance for questions. We've gone a little bit over time, but this has been fascinating. I've learned so many things that I haven't learned before.
yeah, thank you. Thank you.
We hope
I
to see you
enjoyed
in Lodge as soon as possible.
Yeah,
And
good.
we're welcome to come to any Wednesday meeting again. Same time, same number.
Okay.
Jack Sherry, Ben Franklin, brother Jack Sherry, brother Ben Franklin. Thank you very much for being here for John J. Lodge.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much.